Okay, it's preparing to go live.
It says we are live on YouTube.
Yep, it's just coming up on my side here. All right, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. We have Robert Hunziker joining us today to go through some questions and answering on his run for Congress in CD8. Hello, Robert. How are you doing this evening?
Very good. Busy week, but getting through it.
Yeah. So how's it been so far? How long have you been out there on your campaign?
Since the end of August. It's been a few months. It's been a lot of meeting people, which has been great. All walks of life, from all ends of the spectrum, going around canvassing, going around to different functions and groups, exposing myself to groups I didn't even know were there.
It's amazing how many are out there, right?
It is. And there's a lot of people. And just the fact that I've just scratched the surface at this point just amazes me.
Yeah, there's still a lot to do.
I know. It's awesome though.
So one question I wanted to ask, and that I try to ask everyone when I can remember, is what got you, what made you actually run for office? What motivated you to do this?
Well, it's a couple of things. So for a while, I've been an activist. I've worked with Wolfpack. A couple of Bernie Kratz I actually met before because I was doing stuff with the Bill Stein campaign in the last election. And I've been fairly politically active for a while. It never occurred to me to run until recently. It was partly Bernie's message, but a big chunk of it was that I was just sick of having candidates who were close to what I wanted, but not what I wanted in a candidate. They weren't progressive. They said some of the right things, and then the ones that said more of the right things didn't deliver on those right things. And it got to be the point where, and I was told by a couple of people that I needed to run, but it was actually when Sarah Smith said in very frank terms, look, if you want a progressive in this race, you are going to have to be that progressive. And it just clicked at that moment. And I'm just like, you're right. It's the only way to guarantee there's a progressive in the race is to be the progressive in the race. And I have a lot of management experience. I knew it was something I could do. It just never occurred to me really that it was something I should do. And now I realize in the times we're in, it's put up, just do it. We have to do it. We're running out of time.
Right. And the climate is now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If I want a future for myself, for my kids, it's now.
Right. What's your top three? Let's do that. Top three issues that you are running on in your race right now.
It's hard to do top three. Everything is so interrelated, but I can definitely say there's a top one that is money in politics. If we don't get money in politics, I don't think we can tackle anything else. It's the cornerstone that's preventing enough votes in Congress or enough exposure for candidates. Until we have public financing of elections, if we don't have corporate and big money donors, influencing our elections and deciding what happens, as soon as we can fix that, then we can fix the scale of what's likely to get voted in Congress. Because right now, if it's an unpopular thing, 30% chance. If it's a popular thing, 30% chance. That is the wrong scale. And we need to fix that. And we need to fix that by getting rid of that money that's pushing that scale.
What are some ways that you see that we can work on doing that?
Well, I as a member of Wolfpack, I do support the initiative to do the amendment by states and have a constitutional convention. I get there's a lot of people scared about that, but once you learn the details on that, it's not what the propaganda says it is. It's not going to be this crazy free for all where we're going to lose our education system or anything like that. It's very controlled, and the fact that everybody has to vote on it. That is one attack. I think approaching it from one angle is foolhardy. I also think that relying on the Congress that is there now to wake up and do it, because they're financially benefiting from the system as it is today. So relying on them to do it, not super great. But supporting candidates who don't take PAC money, who don't participate in that system, and replacing those candidates with as many as possible to push us over the edge. We don't need everybody. We just need enough people to sway. So that is another reason to support candidates like me and the Justice Democrats and our revolution. We've all woken up and we're taking over, and that's what we need to do. I've signed the American Promise Pledge to not take any corporate money and to support an amendment when I take office and to co-sign. So I think we have to attack it from all angles.
That's absolutely true. Thank you. Yes, I love that. The money in politics is kind of cornerstone of what we've got today. It really pushed us over the edge, so to speak. Within your community, Washington State, I guess in general, what are some organizations or local causes around your area? Have you been involved in any nonprofit work or, within the schools or anything?
In Washington, no. I was at a time I did volunteer in Tucson, and I volunteered in New York City and some of the surrounding areas. I went through some hard times myself in the in between time. I was actually homeless for a little bit. I was very fortunate in the fact that I had a support structure that was able to get me through during that recession when I did go through that. So there was a lot of time where volunteering wasn't on the top of my priorities at the time. I have volunteered for campaigns recently, but I don't think that really counts. But I'd say Wolfpack, but that's not local to my community. I did some volunteer work after 9/11. I was in New York at the time, and I participated in a fundraiser. I put on a fundraiser, I should say, shortly after the event to raise money for the firefighters. I used to work at a soup kitchen, doing dishes and things like that. But that was all on the East Coast in the in-between time.
Oh, how was it being in through that? I mean, if that didn't make you want to try to...
It's not something I like to think about very often. It was an extra burden just because I was in the process of getting a job there after I graduated college. That was going to be a great paying job, and the job disappeared when the towers disappeared because the company disappeared. So if it had happened just a year or two later, I would have been there. And so it's a rough thing to think about.
Yeah, definitely. Have you thought about some bills that you might champion once you're in? Something that that other than what we talked about, the money in politics. How do you feel about single payer health care?
It's the only smart thing to do. It's ridiculous we don't already have it. So I want Medicare for all. I don't really care if we can't do Medicare for all as long as we get single payer. Medicare for all is the most logical thing to do because it's already in place and it's already a proven system to work, and you're more gambling if you try and do a different thing. So the infrastructure is already there. People love it. It's the most popular program there is in our healthcare industry. So just do it for everybody. It's not that hard. It can't be the only thing you do. You also have to allow for negotiations for drug prices, and you have to regulate a little bit on that. And you know, the big argument against that is, oh, but they're funding all this research and they need to make money so they can do more research. That's crap, because we fund 80% or more on most of the medications we get. And honestly, if they drop out and we need to just fund it ourselves, if 60 to 80% of the funding on medical research is done by taxpayer money, then why don't we just, I would rather have everybody surviving off of good health care and not have people die because they can't afford their meds than, you know, have that extra 20 or 30% of funding that these corporations that are making billions and billions, you know, are providing. It's just stupid. You know, in the temporary, I'm also okay with re-importing over. I think it's a short-term gap. We need to fix it on our end too. But yeah, single payer is cheaper, it's more efficient, and everybody's covered.
That's for sure. I forgot to ask you at the beginning,
Yeah.
what are you running under as far as like party status? How are you filed with the Secretary of State?
I'm filed as a Democrat. So I'm a Democratic Socialist of America member, but I'm running as a Democrat because that's right now Washington only really recognizes the two main parties.
Excellent. I see that Rick Lefebvre has joined us. Oz, do you have any questions before I keep going for Robert?
Yeah, first of all, I need a sound check.
I can hear you loud and clear. Yes, thank you.
Okay, Robert, I'm going to pose a question to you, and it's it's a question that I'm asking all the candidates.
Okay.
And that is your feeling on shoring up the Affordable Care Act, the for-profit insurance program that is the market solution currently being pushed by the Democratic Party. What would you say to somebody who believes that they need to shore up the Affordable Care Act before we could move to a more robust system like Medicare for all or single payer? Your response on that?
Well, first I'd ask them what their logic is on why we need to shore it up first. Just because moving over to Medicare for all is a cheaper program. The thing I would say that we need to look at rather than trying to fix the system we have is move over to Medicare for all, but have a game plan for all the workers who are in the insurance industry who would lose their jobs if we did that. Just because we don't necessarily want to throw everybody out. Yes, there's a lot of employment in other insurance industries they can do, but we want to make sure that we're not just, you know, leaving millions of Americans without work. But it's still a better program. It's cheaper, and we can set things up. There's lots of jobs we can do. We can work on infrastructure. We can work on training programs, and that's why if you couple that with education programs, then you can train people for other jobs. I again would have to know the logic behind why they think of the Affordable Care Act shoring up is the way to go, because as long as there's a for-profit motive in our healthcare, then we're never going to have everybody covered, and we're never going to have it be affordable, because that goes against the profit.
Okay, Robert, the origin of that question is the pro-establishment propaganda line is what we're getting from a lot of the incumbent representatives and a couple of the new candidates who are running on a pro-establishment platform. Because I believe what you said, they are going to take care of their for-profit insurance donors and the pharmaceutical industry. And that's why I asked that question, because that is something that is going to be ever present in the minds of anybody who considers supporting you. I think you get an A+ on your answer personally, but that's why I asked that question. It's not something that any of us here, at least in this room, would consider because of everything you just said. And you made some very cogent, viable points, and I'm going to take notes on those, and I appreciate your response. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rick. Thank you.
I forgot I was on mute. I pulled a Courtney. No other questions right now for you, Rick? Or we got you on? No. Excellent. Courtney, are you ready for your question?
Well, I have at least one for now.
Okay.
Are there any areas in which your views differ from Bernie Sanders? And if so, how?
I would say my views on Israel are a little divergent from his. I believe it is an unhumane occupation. Other than that, I believe that he's doing great things, and I believe that he's fighting even with the constant bad mouthing after the election, him being scapegoated and blamed for everything. But I can't say I know absolutely everything he believes, but for what I know, and I would say just his policies on Israel, but I understand why he has that position. He's got that deep personal background, with his heritage that kind of skews him in that direction. Is the right direction? No. I think he could be pulled to understand why it's important to solve it and recognize that Israel's doing some inhumane things.
If I may jump in here, just to clarify, because I read into Bernie's position, it's not that he thinks that it is the occupation is not inhumane. His position, he thinks that the BDS movement is not. He criticizes that specific strategy of boycotting Israel because of the history of Jewish prosecution, and he believes in two-state solution and stuff like that. But he's not against calling the occupation of Palestine inhumane.
Okay, yeah, and it was really the BDS thing that I feel is wrong. I think if people want to boycott, they should be allowed to boycott. It's a very American thing.
Agreed. Okay. I'm trying to think. There was, in going over your vetting form, there's just not a lot to pick apart since you're fairly in line. So I'm like trying to dig up something to scratch at here, mister. Let's see. Sorry, I have an airplane.
It's okay. Does anybody else want to jump in while she's thinking?
I was on mute again. I try to be quiet for everyone and I forget to unmute myself. So income inequality.
Okay. The scourge of our age.
Right?
One of the many.
Everywhere I look, I see more than I can count people being affected.
Yes.
Outside of Washington State, because you'll be, looking further past our own state into all of this. What are some thoughts you have on helping bridge the gap?
Well, the biggest thing we need to do is restructure our tax system to something more like it was after the New Deal, where the tax burden doesn't fall on those who can't afford it. We have a tiered tax system for a reason, and people do not need to be making $10 billion a year and storing it away. That they're not contributing back to the society that is benefiting them so much. So we need to restructure things so that way we're taking care of people. The big argument against doing that kind of thing is that these wealthy people create jobs and they're job creators. Well, the simple way around that is to just put in some tax breaks if they create jobs. You know what? If they create jobs, that means they're making less money because they're investing that money back into society, which means that they're not going to get taxed on it. It's a completely BS argument about that. And if we want to make sure that there are jobs and that people are being taken care of, then we need to legislate that is a mandatory thing. We can't just rely on the goodwill of the people who are making insane amount of money. Are all of them bad? No, not all of them are bad. but enough of them are doing incredibly horrible things that it's time that we step in and we bridge that gap. The other thing we need to do on the opposite side is once we get that funding, we need to make sure that people have a baseline of their needs being met. So everybody needs to have housing. Everybody needs to have the ability to have some kind of livable income. Everybody needs to have their Medicare, as you said, Medicare for all. So once you have all your basic needs, you're going to find that the income inequality is going to be less and less of an issue, because you're going to need to funnel that money back in. It's going to spur the economy and help things grow.
Thank you. Yes, that would. I saw that Rick has his hand up again. I think he wants to jump back in real quick. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah. Robert, on that topic, how do you think a state bank would help that situation you just talked about? Kind of thinking about that topic myself.
Do keep in mind, I'm a socialist, so I'm pro state banks. It's another one of those things where if you take the profit motive out, then the people who need the resources have that. So if you have a state bank, you can have programs that have mortgages that are less of a burden on people. Granted, ideal world, we don't need mortgages to begin with, but that's a whole nother topic. You could also have a state bank that helps fund worker initiatives, so you can have more employee-owned businesses and more small businesses, and you can cut that threshold of entry for small businesses to start and form and help their community. So once you do that, the community starts to thrive again. And you're not going to get that from a big commercial bank that's motivation is high profits. The other thing you get is you no longer have the risk ventures that led to the 2008 crash. Is if we have these big commercial profit banks that are motivated by profit, as soon as there's legislation that opens up for them to do more profit and take no real risks, yeah, they were risky things, but they didn't have to pay that risk in 2008. We had to pay that risk. It's corporate welfare at its finest.
So the state banks would eliminate the profit mode, or the profit that the big banks are getting, and reinvest it into the public where it belongs. So I appreciate that. Great answer. Thank you.
Yeah. I think we lost Courtney.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there she is. You're muted. There you
I was
go.
moving.
Okay.
For Dizzy. Let's see. You mentioned being living in New York. Can you tell us a little bit about your life travels? Where you're from? How you got here?
From is a hard question to answer. I am a child of the U.S. So when I was younger, my father was in the radio business, and we moved from radio station to radio station. And then when I got older, I ended up having to move partially for family reasons, and then later on because I became a contractor. And at the time, I had to move to where the contract jobs were. And for a bit, while I was trying to recover from the recession, I had very little choice in picking an area. After a little bit of time, I was able to recover and get back on my feet, and made the choice to come out to Washington. I knew there'd be plenty of work for what I do. I'm a user experience designer. I have a history in web design, filmmaking, things like that. And I knew there'd be a plethora of jobs here. And it's gorgeous. I liked a lot about when I lived in California, and there's a lot of what I liked from California here, but not a lot of the stuff I don't like. So it's definitely been wonderful being here. But if we have the time, I would be happy to go through all the places I've lived, but it's a lot.
That's all right. It's good to just get an idea.
Yeah, the one thing that is nice about that is I've lived in rural areas, I've lived in urban areas, I lived in the suburbs, I've lived in mountain towns where they were like super rural, half an hour to a grocery store, two other neighbors. So I've experienced what a lot of people don't get to experience is what life is like in those different communities, which gives me a perspective I think a lot of people don't have.
And so vast swaths of Washington are rural. Do you have any rural solutions? Are you familiar with the problems of the rural life? And that also ties into your congressional district, I guess. How much is rural in your district?
Population wise, it's about 10,000 people, but land mass wise, it's maybe 2/3 of the district. It just depends on how you're approaching it. A good chunk of my district is national parks or rural land, farms and things like that. There just aren't a lot of people on those particular properties. But to answer your first question, I'm not going to presume to know what modern rural life problems are without a deep talk with those in the communities. But from what I've learned from talking with people in rural communities, a lot of the issues are very similar. A lot of it's jobs. A lot of it is sustainability if you're on a farm, because corporate farms are making it harder and harder for the smaller farms that are what we really need more than anything to thrive and function. But transportation is a big issue. Resources are a big issue. And just a lot of it's around financial concerns.
Taxes.
But one of the campaign managers I'm talking to is from a very rural district, and I like getting that rural perspective that it's an ever evolving one. But there's some things that are just going to be universal that will solve a lot of people's concerns, whether you're in the city or not. And a lot of that's getting your basic life needs met. If you're in a rural area and there's programs to help you, subsidize your farm if you're doing sustainable agriculture that's going to benefit the community, which is what we need to switch to if we're going to, try and solve our food issues, using better technology and having those programs that we can help those rural farmers that need that. And take away some of the subsidies from these big corporate farms that don't really serve us any real good and will be a huge detriment to us in the long run.
Excellent. When you're ready to start writing legislation about sustainable agriculture, I hope that you call me.
Okay.
or at least Google permaculture. So
yep, my wife's a big fan. She's kind of a gardening nut, which I think is driving her nuts that we're still doing apartment life. I think she was hoping we'd have our plot of land and have our house. Like her dream is to have a food forest.
Perfect.
I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
oh yeah.
She talks a lot about chinampas, which I don't know if I'm even saying that correctly.
But I know what you're talking about. Islands.
So yeah, I've got a good resource there. Excellent.
You must be just jumping up and down inside right now, Courtney.
I am. I'm like, yes, I'm going to vote for your wife.
That's awesome. I'd vote for her. She's amazing.
Excellent. We can think of you as a team. So, well, that's a relief to hear. It's always nice when I'm not introducing someone to the topic.
Yeah. She spends a lot of time at the library. I think she checked out at least 10 books on the subject. So.
Fantastic. And it's such a versatile thing. I think that the United States needs to stop exporting. Well, I won't name any names. let's just say American junk and start exporting permaculture.
Yeah.
So we can reverse desertification and all that other great stuff. Anyway, I'm trying to think of a question.
Okay.
Since you got me so excited with the last answer.
Too happy to.
You don't even know what this girl goes through. A quick question, I guess, is
Okay.
who are your main donors? Who is the donor base you're looking for? Or I know you're not going to take any big PAC, super PAC corporate money. You taking any PAC money at all, even if like some nurses unions or anything like that?
I'm open to unions. As long as the union has a clean source. So if the union's getting any money from the corporation, then I'm really not interested. And I still will only do small dollar donations, so everybody's equally accountable. Right now I'm just starting my fundraising efforts. I wanted to get the people first. There's no point in doing fundraising and getting money from people if you don't have the support of people to begin with. So that's been going very well. And I'm starting to get donations. I got some just when I announced, just a handful, but it was more than enough to get started. And I did already get an endorsement from the Free Thought group. So they're the Humanist Society.
Yeah.
And they did offer me PAC money, but I did turn it down. But instead, they came up with a very clever thing that they're going to, in March, they're going to start doing a fundraising individual for all the members of the group. So that way they can individually contribute, because they do get some corporate money, and I just wasn't going to do that.
What a wonderful answer. I mean, if they're just, they're like, here, you're like, I love it. I love it. I wish more were doing that, for sure. Did you have something? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. One advantage I have is that with my background, I've been able to do a lot of the legwork myself that people spend a lot of their initial startup cash on. I was able to put my website together with very little effort. I was able to get all my designs done myself. I was able to do social media presence myself. I was able to do my own video stuff, and I can edit and I can shoot. I have a lot of the equipment already. Cameras, lighting, green screens, you name it.
Wow.
So I was uniquely set up to already have all the resources I needed to start with. So I spent most of my money so far on some tools and some of my print material that I wanted to get professionally done. I don't think I'll use that printer again. I wasn't super happy with the quality. They were recommended to me by the Democratic groups I was going to, and I should know better. But they were union, and that was the main thing I wanted.
Right.
Yeah, I actually had already printed some of my own material at home, and the quality was almost the same.
Nice, but we got to get that union bug. We got to get that union bug.
Yeah. And I have a backup suggestion should you need it for a union shop.
Awesome. Yeah, I got one from Sarah that I like her stuff, so I'm gonna just try and use them in future. But I'm gonna use what I have, because I'm not gonna throw money away either.
Right.
But they're very, very affordable for yard signs and stuff like that too.
Do you have any? So you're running for a seat that the incumbent is releasing, not running for again.
Yes.
So
he's acting as though he is running for it again, which is interesting.
Oh, that is interesting.
They're trying to set Dino Rossi up by doing that, because Dino Rossi is in a position where if they behave like he's the incumbent, then he's going to have a better chance. So a lot of people are going to, I think they're hoping that people are going to just conflate the two, that one's equivalent to the other. I don't think that strategy is going to work personally, but they don't think highly of us.
And the last time I checked your race, there were 7 or 8 I feel like there might be more contenders.
There's a lot of people who just dropped out.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that update.
So right now, I believe there's 5 Democrats in the race, 1 independent, and then Dino Rossi.
Okay. So that did narrow the D group a little bit.
I'm told that it's going to narrow down a couple more people before the end of the month. I don't know who that is or who they're referring to. My guess is that the establishment picks are Shannon and Kim.
Okay.
If I were to throw it out there, it seems to be where they're focusing their energies as a party on, and you can see a lot of coaching out of Kim from the first time I met her to the last 2 times I interacted with her.
Okay. So what can you compare and contrast yourself a little bit in a positive way? I'm not asking for mudslinging, but if you do, that's your business.
Okay. It's kind of hard to say what's positive about me without clearly saying that it's not positive about them. But essentially, I'm an issue-based candidate. You're going to be hard pressed to find the other candidates seriously talking about all the issues. I actually asked you in a conversation if you had actually had a chance to talk to Shannon, because I have no idea what her stance is on anything. I was almost hoping that there would be another progressive in the race and just improve our odds altogether. But she was a late arrival. I've now done 2 functions with her. I still have no idea. And it seems to be a common case. When issue questions are asked, I answer them. Just straight up, as you've seen tonight. It's not that hard, and it's what people want to hear. They don't want to hear, platitudes, and they don't want to hear, vagaries. And they definitely don't want to hear talking points like access to healthcare. They want concrete solutions, and that's what I'm here to provide. I'm not going to say I know everything, but I'm here to say I'm willing to listen to people and find out what the best solutions are.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, Shannon is in too recently for us to have any engagement with her so far. So, but like everybody in your race, everybody has, we do need to send an invite to her, but everybody else in the race has had an invitation to be vetted by us as well. So, and we'll be looking to see what the issues are, because we are also an issues-based organization. I had something else in the brain.
Okay, well, I'd say outside of that, one thing that would stand me out is I've been through it. I know what people are going through. I'm a millennial. I think I'm about as old as you can be and still be a millennial. But I have the issues of student loan debt. My wife and I pay a lot of money. My monthly thing now, almost 20 years later, is still $400 a month I pay in student loan debt. Like I said before, I've been homeless or near enough, more than I'd like. I've had to move around, and I've had very little control over my life and what jobs I could get. I've worked very hard to get that control back and to build my career back up, but it's very hard. And even though I might make a decent living now per monetarily as it looks on paper, I'm still a contractor. I still am suffering what a lot of people are suffering with. My jobs are temporary, which means that there's 3 or 4 or more months that I'm going to go without work while I'm looking for the next contract job. And that's what most of the jobs are right now. And that's something we need to fix. So I have an understanding of what a lot of people are going through, from a lot of perspectives, because I've had jobs that paid me next to nothing. When the recession hit, management jobs in Tucson wanted to pay $10 an hour. Senior positions wanted to pay $10 an hour. And there were so many people flooding the market that they could get that. And that's not where we should be at. Like, minimum wage should be 15, not 10, let alone, skilled labor that requires a lot of cost for education.
So you're a champion of 15, or are you open to the idea of a livable minimum wage?
I'm open to a livable minimum wage tied to inflation, but the problem with a livable minimum wage is that is people can argue what a livable minimum wage is, and we need to look at the facts of what a livable minimum wage is and determine that in a different area. I think $15 a minimum wage in the Seattle area is a nice start. I don't think that's where it should be. When you look at profits and productivity, minimum wage should be well over $20 an hour nationwide, let alone in our most expensive areas like Seattle and California and New York. Like, it's a good start. I'm not stuck on 15.
Nice. Good to hear.
I think it's sellable. And I think it's a short-term win to get people comfortable with a long-term goal.
Right. Yeah. Because a lot of people are scared about that, the minimum wage rising, and thinking of, well, hearing about all the doom that can come from it, from some sources.
So that's one thing I think having the state bank would help with, lowering the barrier of entry, so we could help smaller businesses. So businesses that are somewhat established but can't afford that minimum wage right now, we all know that once the minimum wage is there, it's going to invest back in the community and people are going to be able to afford it. But if we can just give a little assistance to the companies that need it most when we're first doing it, and make it a temporary situation, that once that money goes back in the economy, we're no longer, they can fend for themselves again and they can pay their employees. But then people will have that investment and they'll see, oh wait, this is great for my business, this minimum wage. That's what keeps happening every time the minimum wage goes up.
Right. And just think that when we get the single payer passed here in Washington State, right, when we can get that included in this, the small businesses should really be able to thrive.
It helps them more than anybody else, a minimum wage.
Right. And we need to really boost our small businesses over anything else, I think. It really.
Yeah, I think we need to have more small businesses and startups and invest in people to make our country better.
Exactly. Tambourine has joined us. Tambourine, do you have any questions for Robert?
Hey, stranger.
Hi. Hold on, let me take the video.
I love that picture of you, by the way.
I was just about to say that.
Thank you.
The small picture of you, it looks like until it went big. I thought that was a weird picture of you coming out of some kind of net. And then
it was actually taken in the middle of my delegate speech that got me elected to be a national delegate.
Nice.
So so I was curious what you feel about whistleblowers generally, and then depending upon your answer, would you support and or co-sponsor any legislation that would protect them?
Well, I can answer the second one first because it's quick. Yes, I would support them. But I honestly think the whistleblowers that we have, in the limelight today have been saviors of our democracy. They expose so many things that need to be exposed, and that should not be protected. If things are a detriment or go against our constitutional rights, then we should know about that. That should not be protected. And people who expose that are protecting the Constitution and protecting the people, and they should be awarded, not punished. I think we need to clean their slates, allow them to come back in the country, those who are still abroad, and protect them. And we need to make sure that the people in power are held accountable. And that's one of the best ways to do it, because people inside the machines, as it were, that see something's wrong and have a moral obligation to tell people should not be punished for that. I get that there's a concern some people have about endangering American lives, but that hasn't been the case.
Exactly. There has been no documented case, not one case that is proven to have lost any life regarding anything that Chelsea Manning exposed or Edward Snowden. So it's really good to hear you say that. And we'll make a pinky swear. If we both get in, we'll co-sponsor that bill together.
Sounds good. I'm all over that.
Awesome.
Got so many things to co-sponsor.
So many things. Robert, wait, I just was going to ask, do you remember back in the day, the Super Friends?
Uh-huh.
Right? Remember, Wonder Twin Powers, activate. And she'd be like, Shayna, a pail of water. And then the brother would be like, a walrus. I never knew how the two kind of corresponded. But anyway, you get the picture.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Our super Congress peoples. I know Rick Lefebvre is ready for to jump in again. Rick, are you ready?
You're still on mute.
Yeah, I think I'm ready. Being that you're running under a Democratic on the Democratic ticket,
okay.
Have you been able to get the vote builder data from the state party or any of the tool? Oh, have they denied you, or have you asked?
I've asked with no responses. The closest thing I've gotten as a response, and I think it's because they don't want to give me a formal response because then I could look elsewhere. But the closest thing I was able to get is from Jeremy Tootin, or not Jeremy Tootin, I'm sorry, Joshua Trubin. He's head of the 5th LD. On the bright side, he is a Bernie-crat, but I think he's uninformed a little bit. He said, as long as I can get one LD endorsement, I should get access. But given what's going on with Sarah, I don't see that being the case. But I luckily have some DSA members in Pierce County who called to do this same kind of thing. And they happen to also sit on the board of the Pierce County Democrats, and they're going to try and put through the paperwork to get me endorsement at the county level to bypass the LDs altogether. So I'm crossing my.
Okay. Well, I just want to let you know that we all need to unify behind this issue of the state party not giving access to people who are running under the Democratic ticket for vote builder and any other tools, because if we don't unite on this and just try and work around the system, they're going to just say, oh, that was easy. We just nailed everybody. Sarah Smith, Dorothy, Robert Hunziker. So we don't have to worry. You're not running against an incumbent, which makes it even worse, because Sarah's running against the incumbent, as you know, and they basically stonewalled her. Yes. And believe me, I am screaming. I'm a second vice chair in my county, and I'm screaming at my lungs at every meeting about how unfair this is, and it's unacceptable. Yes. And this will not pass with the counties because we do have some autonomy. We don't do what Tina Podlasky tells us because we won't recognize this kind of chicanery and corruption. This is blatant corruption that cannot stand. If you're running under the Democratic ticket, damn it, I want those tools given to you, Sarah, and anybody else that runs under that ticket. And I mean it, because the next election cycle, if it hasn't happened, I'm going to run for chair, and I will get chair of this county. And we will make some. That's it.
Oz, I would become a Democrat for a day to vote for you. Now that's saying something.
But if I could, I'd vote for you too.
So
right, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Courtney.
Okay, I have a 2 to 3
okay.
separate ones.
Go ahead.
So if you want to get a question in edgewise, you better jump on it. So the Puyallup Tribe is, I'm not 100% certain, but I think that the 8th may contain a portion of the reservation. Are you at all aware of that?
I didn't see that. I do go all the way down to Mount Rainier, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, and then you come close to the port, and that's, so I think they have lands out to Mount Rainier that are, there's a term for it, like traditional lands, but protect, like it's not the same as reservation. Like I don't know the terms, sadly. I'm trying to pull it out of my memory bank, but it's not happening.
It's all good. I understand what you're saying. You're good.
The bulk of the reservation is at the port and northeast Tacoma, but then it kind of swings out to the east a little bit.
Forest District, yeah.
And so I know that it's a lot of Sarah Smith, but I think I need to confirm, but I think it overlaps into the 8th and the 10th as well. And then the 6th is what is most of Tacoma. So there's a lot of gerrymandering hell when it comes to this area.
Okay.
So, and even if you don't have any tribal land in your district, I want to recruit you anyway.
Okay.
And I didn't formulate the request with Tambourine, but I think she's not surprised when I say I would like the 6th, 8th, 9th, and 10th to come together and meet with the tribe and form a unity with the tribe if possible. So and this is just coming out of me right now, so nobody else knows about it.
You know I'm in, Courtney. You don't have to ask me twice.
Excellent.
Yeah, if they'll have it, I'm definitely down.
Okay, I mean, of course, I hope they're interested.
Yeah,
so we can work on that further. But
they don't have a lot of reason to trust people outside the reservation. We'll put it that way.
Right. And right now, the Port of Tacoma, are you aware of the LNG plant proposed for the Port of Tacoma that's currently being built without permits?
Yeah. Just from headlines and stuff. I haven't looked too much into it.
It's as big an issue, I'd say, as Standing Rock, in different ways. Like it's in a population center, whereas so it affects everybody. Whereas Standing Rock was you're screwing us and then everybody downstream. But it's a threat to the entire Salish Sea. So I don't really have a question beyond, do you want to play ball with us? And I'm happy with your answer.
Okay.
And I do want to draw your attention to it, even if your district doesn't overlap with them. We do need solidarity. It's a huge, horrible thing.
Yeah.
So it's only 10 feet shorter than the Tacoma Dome.
Oh wow, that's huge.
Yeah, I mean it's not as big wide. It's almost as wide as it is tall. So it's not as big as the Tacoma Dome, but it's only 10 feet shorter. So it's some and permits are not in place, and environmental protections have not been evaluated properly, et cetera, et cetera. We can talk later about that.
Yeah.
But then we made a list.
Okay.
Washington Bernie Kratz did a while back. Since you're a socialist, we made a list of things that we think should be socialized. So I want to rattle it off. And what I'm hoping that you can think of is anything you disagree with. Is this putting you too much on the spot?
No, it's already a great answer.
I said everything.
Right. So I'll list it off, and then anything you think you disagree with, or if you think of something we haven't thought of.
Okay.
Which is a bigger task. So prisons, schools, healthcare, postal service, utilities, water, banks, public lands and natural resources, infrastructure, internet cell service, social security, military and its associated industrial complex, foster care, mass transit, including airways, railways, ferries, bus, etc., libraries, childcare, space exploration, scientific funding, elections, first responders, social services, Veterans Administration.
I think you have childcare in there twice, but
it should be in there twice.
I mean, yes to everything and then some, but you know, I'd expand that out to community housing. So that's one of the beauties of doing a social bank, is then you can get funding to build co-op housing. I mean, there's so many things. There's so many things, and I might have missed it, but I didn't hear like healthcare system, like ambulance drivers and things like that. But
yeah, we have healthcare and first responders.
Okay, yeah, I missed it, but yeah, everything. But yeah, that would be a good first start.
Okay, I'll send that list to you. All right, excellent. I think
Rick is trying to get in there.
And I'm so glad that you thought of housing. It's been something talked about recently, and it just hadn't made it onto the list officially.
Okay.
So thank you. And
all right, go ahead, Rick, real quick.
Yeah, just a quick question, housekeeping thing. What is your, who built your website? Because you have an interactive portal under your issues, which is fantastic. You can have a conversation.
Yeah, I did that.
Wow. I want one.
It's WordPress based.
For our group.
That would be beautiful.
Wow.
For our group, actually.
That is nice. I'm going to check that out. So I go to WordPress and look at their stuff that goes into it, right?
It's a customized template. Dorothy actually has the same base template that I have, but I customized it a little further. But yeah, you can get. I could probably help out with that, but probably after the election.
What? You don't have like a whole lot of time on your hands right now, huh?
It'll be so much easier when you're our congressional representative.
There you go.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Robert.
Actually, I do have a question when it comes to, once you're in there, an issue that I've had.
Okay.
When I found out. Is how much time is spent fundraising during your congressional hours for the Democratic Party. It's kind of reason why I kind of like the idea of an independent or third, just because it's I believe it's within both parties, I'm assuming, but I know Dem Party for sure that you have to fundraise so many hours. How are you, I guess, aware of that? Are you prepared to do that?
No, I'm aware of it, but I think it's ridiculous, and I think we need to pass the 28th Amendment to get money out of politics, so we don't need to do that at all. It should be public financing of elections. Legislators should not be wasting their precious time with that, and they should be getting some actual stuff done.
Wouldn't that be nice? What a concept.
So yeah, that's where I would push. As soon as they ask, oh, please do some fundraising. You have to do some fundraising. I say, no, we're going to do this. Then we don't need to fundraise. It's that simple.
So great to not have those strings, because the Democratic Party is not doing anything for you right now. So
I know.
And also
I haven't had to sign anything. I'm not signing that DCC thing that's going around. No. 60% of my money is not going towards TV ads.
Also to point out that congressperson becomes super delegates. Like I know that some Unity Reform Commission passed some things right now, so that you have to vote with your state, but it's not final yet. But you will have the more progressive Democrats, socialists, Greens we get in as Democrats, the easier and sooner we can actually get away from those policies too. And also, yeah, that's all I had. I don't know why I said also.
You get a progressive president elected.
President Sanders. President Turner would be great too.
Oh God, that would be amazing. I love Nina Turner.
I agree. I second that for sure.
I third that.
Yeah. So I want Bernie. I want a Sanders Turner ticket, followed by 8 years of Turner.
That sounds good.
Solidify that would be great. Solidify our progress. That would be wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, got
You're
carried
happy.
away. Like I have theme music and I can feel the wind blowing my cape when I think of all the work.
Right. So Robert,
Yes.
so we've talked about a bunch of different things already tonight, but I want to give you the opportunity right now to talk or make sure that you're able to talk about everything that you would like to on this interview. So in case we missed something that you're really passionate about, something we haven't questioned you about, I'd like to hear more from you outside of what was asked.
Well, a couple things. One would be getting out of the wars we're in. I've lived almost. I'm 36, and I've lived almost my entire life in a state of war. And they're war that are just enriching people, and not benefiting us or making us safer. It's quite the opposite. And you know, we just had a big win overseas, and the U.S. had nothing to do with it. And if we hadn't been involved, it would have happened sooner. You know, the terrorism does not grow does not diminish when we bomb all the innocent people there and give them the only outlet to fight is to fight us. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. It's costly. And in the money that we're spending on our military is ridiculous. And 60% of it goes to contractors that are making money on both ends. And it's not going to our troops. The money that we spend on the military should be going to the people and going to actually protecting us, not in building airplanes that never see the light of day, that are just a slight improvement on what we already have. Like, that's ridiculous. We don't need those kind of fighter jets. We need to be spending our money on peace efforts, which is a lot harder than war efforts. You know, it's better for us. It makes us safer, and I'd like to raise my kids in a thing where they don't have to worry about getting bombed by another country because we're pissing them off. The other than that, you know, we just had the homeless summit, and you know, that's another big thing I think we should tackle, and that's part of, if we have at least partially socialized housing, we can solve a lot of that. And if we, you know, get rid of some of the regulations that don't help people but are just there for a profit motive for companies, such as minimum square footage on housing, which should be unconstitutional to begin with. You know, if it's not a safety issue, then we shouldn't be preventing people from doing that. You know, the tiny house movement is popular for a reason, and we should allow people to do that if that's what works for them. Whether it's on wheels or not, I don't care. You know, as long as it's safe, and as long as, you know, people aren't hurting other people, then that's you know, a great thing we can do. We touched briefly on sustainability, but we didn't talk at all about restructuring our energy system. You know, somebody asked me recently about what my thoughts were on a carbon tax, and I said it's nice and it's a good step in the right direction, but the problem with it is oftentimes the way they're structured is it's going to hurt working people more than anybody else because they're paying at the pump, and it doesn't actually help people right now to switch to electric, because if you're switching to electric and most of the country is running off of an energy system that produces CO2, then switching to electric might actually make more CO2 in the air than the gas in your car does. And the process of making an electric car in and of itself produces a lot of CO2 and methane and other toxins that go in the ground. I'm not saying switching to electric is a bad thing, but we can't just do a carbon tax. We need to actually switch our energy sources first, and really think hard about that, and incentivize people to install their own independent energy systems. You know, if they can provide for themselves and the community, because if you put solar on your house, there's more energy produced than you need. I think, and I could be wrong on this because it's been a while since I've seen the stat, but when you look at a map of what you need to energize an entire state, it's like the size of a football field. So if you just had a couple developments in a community, put solar in the house, boom, we have everything covered for a good chunk. And if you do that, if you basically did Nevada and Arizona housing, you could power the entire country with the amount of sun they get out there. So there's lots of common sense things you can do. I'm obviously pro common sense gun law based on the questionnaire you had. And you know, with the latest stats that are coming out, with the fact that you can almost guarantee that the danger is increased by I think it's 22% if a cop goes to a house where there's a domestic violence call. That should be a vetting process. That should become a common sense thing. If there's a history of domestic violence, they shouldn't be able to get guns because they keep showing up again and again. Domestic violence was behind a lot of the mass shooters. They had a history of domestic violence. You know, let's look at things logically. So there's probably more, but at this point I'm blanking out on the top of my head.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I'm really glad you hit on what you did. The no wars is huge. In some of the threads I'm in, I have some people in there who are in the military, and the things I hear about the waste coming from there, it's ridiculous.
They had a bunch of uniforms, and they paid $1 million for uniforms that were the wrong color to give to another army when they had the right color uniforms that would have cost nothing. I mean, there's no oversight. It's just ridiculous. It's stupid beyond stupid.
Right, office chairs being bought for like thousands of dollars and tossed out back at the end of the year because they have to spend everything, right?
Yeah. Imagine if they actually spent that on the vets. Oh my God.
But that'd be too humane, maybe. I don't know. But yes, so I really am happy that you touched on that. For sure. Any other questions before we're getting ready to sign off? It's been about an hour now. Any final questions for Robert?
Anybody?
Just if it's not too personal and with respect to their privacy, you have children. You've referenced raising children. I wondered if they were like hypothetical or real.
We don't have children yet, but we want to.
Excellent.
At this point, we're not sure if we're going to adopt or not, but we want to have at least one child.
Excellent.
Wonderful. All right. I'll go ahead and let you give a final statement. Let us know what you need as far as help from your constituents, and how to get a hold of you.
Okay.
Okay. And thank you again. Before we're done, thank you again for taking your time out and putting up with all of our questions tonight. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. And I actually was invited to a candidate forum really far from here that I wasn't going to be able to make anyway. So this kind of made me feel better about not being able to make that other event. So I'm actually pretty grateful we had this, because I feel like I didn't waste my time. This is way more productive than that would have been. So I'd say to answer your questions, the best ways to reach me are, email. So my email is campaign@voteroberthunziker.com. You can also reach out to me on social media. I directly respond to all that, as Courtney well knows, on Facebook. So if you go to Facebook and join my campaign, which the more people that's on there and the more you spread that would be very helpful. social media shares are more powerful than ads. So that would be a great thing for you guys to do, is to just share my message as much as possible. Outside of that, the big thing I need is bodies on the ground, because for my campaign, grassroots is what we need, and we need people. And I could use help with fundraising. I'm running a very tight ship. I don't need a lot of money. I definitely don't need $250,000, which is what they said the minimum bar for me to be competitive is. That's ridiculous. My competitors have spent over $10,000 right now, and they have nothing more than I have. And I've spent, I think, about $400 or something right now. But I guess I'm just a better candidate. I don't know. So fundraising help is great. Bodies on the ground is even better. And sharing my message to as many people. It's that old joke. They tell two people, then they tell two people, then they tell two people. And don't be afraid. I'm very left. So if you're worried that my message won't resonate, I'd rather be honest than have everybody like me. So okay. I stand for what I stand for. I'm not going to apologize for that.
Wonderful. Robert, what's your website?
So it's voteroberthunziker.com.
And we will make sure that all the information will be in the links inside the YouTube. And of course, as we share things out, we'll make everything accessible to be able to get a hold of you, for sure.
And another thing that would be helpful for my campaign is I'd like to coalition build with local candidates who are running in my area and my district, even if it's not directly in my district, but nearby, because we're going to be knocking on a lot of the same doors. And I think having shared resources and getting as many progressives in as possible, as much as I think I can win and as much as I want to win, I consider it a win if we get as many progressives as we can in, even if it's not me.
That's a wonderful point, actually. And that's what we're hoping for with all of the endorsements that we're going to be doing this year, that we all do work together as one across the state. So definitely, let alone in your local areas too. So
yeah,
we're hoping we get that all together for y'all. Again, thank you once again for joining us. I'll go ahead and stop the live stream, but you guys can all stay on if you like. So again, Robert Hunziker, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.